me what you wanted.
Today,
Spice to leave.
we're going to dig around a little in the Eastern Heights section of Elyria, Ohio. This is where we all used to live. I want to begin with the Black River. This particular bend is about 12 miles upstream from Lake Erie. This river was the engine that powered the industry that built this town. The city's around 50 years old in this illustrated map, and you can really see how the waterway influenced how the area was settled. Just north of downtown, the two branches come together in Cascade Park and head north, but before they do, each side has its own beautiful natural waterfall. This is the east, and this is the west. Now, obviously, this is a more updated map. It lacks the pictures, but it's easier to read. Just on the other side of the eastern branch of the Black River, right there, you can see East River Street. That's us, like 5 houses down from the dry cleaners. 937 East River Street. This is from 1971. And that's my Uncle John there manning the hot dogs. My grandmother with the potato chip demonstration. And hey, there's Mom and Dad. Hey, guys. So that's me. I'm 3, running away from the camera. Nice. My little brother there, I think he's 8 months old. Next door to us live the Sasses. I think you can see their backyard right behind us there. And the Formans live next door to them. Shelley Foreman and I used to play together. And then Uncle Joe and Aunt Marion lived over next to them. Several houses to the other side, next to the dry cleaners, lived my friend Ricky Twining. And on the other side of the dry cleaners was Danny Nixon's The Barber Shop, where I got my first haircut. Well, where all the boys got their first haircuts. Right around the corner from here is Elyria Memorial, which is, of course, where I and practically everyone I knew was born. This area of town is called Eastern Heights, and this is where my family lived. Slick moves on the hippity out there. Years later, every time my aunts and uncles would bring someone new to the house, my grandpa would get out the projector and we would all sit around and watch these movies. Today's viewing is the assembling of the swing set. Not quite a barn raising, but you get what you get around here. That's me in between my aunts Barb and Linda. It's my Uncle Bob directing traffic. And hey, that's my Grandpa McCaskie there opening the bag that's got the instructions and all the small pieces while everything's already scattered to the 4 winds. This is in the backyard of that house on East River Street. Oh, hang on a second. I want to back that up just a little bit. Notice he's both getting instructions from my grandmother while reading instructions. Well played. Those are both my grandmothers there manning the refreshments. Not totally sure what Mimi's wearing, though. Oh, good. Looks like they've made some real progress on, well, getting everything out of the box. Mom always said she rented that house from the same neighbor as did her grandfather before her. So I guess that means my great-grandfather must have lived here, too. You gotta do that right next to the boys there, Grandpa? Does that mean my mom lived here at some point in time as well? Well, I have no practical memory of my great-grandfather. My impression was that he lived here for quite a long time. I guess as a renter. I mean, I get not everyone's into home ownership, but how did the neighbor end up owning the house? Good. Looks like they have the frame up. Uncle Kenny admiring his handiwork. Well done, young man. Well, looks like that's 5, everyone. Smoke 'em if you got 'em. Oh, whatever. Oh, there's my little brother being super cute, with Troy being held by my Grandma McCaskie there. Oh, and there's my mom. Oh, there she is again with Susan and Troy. And Mimi, who I think is hiding a drink there. Weird seeing Mom smoke. Oh, and I think that's our dog Blackie. I never really got to ask Mom any of the details around who else might have lived here. Didn't any of them have kids? Because this place clearly needed a swing set. And that's kind of where this started. I wanted to know more about the history of the house and the neighborhood and these home movies. So come join me. We'll do a little internet sleuthing and see what we can find out. Come on, it'll be great. You'll love it. I really like that illustrated map, so I want to go back there. You can see how the river pretty much encapsulates the town at this time. If you were to really look closely, you could see how they set up the businesses towards the north end along Broad Street and the residences to the south of there. Let's zoom in a little on that eastern section of town. Notice the only bridge across the eastern branch of the river is what is known as East Bridge Street. There's no bridge over Broad Street, and there certainly isn't one at the end of 4th. However, As the century progressed, what would become an industrial boom was just getting going, and the city was growing to the point where they really needed to open up some other areas of town for people to live in. The other side of the river seemed the logical next step. So by the late 1800s, they had already installed a bridge at the end of 4th, but it was really only wide enough for foot traffic. You can even see how narrow it is on this map from 1897. Now remember, there's still horse and carriage, so even a footbridge wasn't going to be enough to really open up that area. By the time cars hit the scene, they're going to need something way more substantial. So in the early 1900s, it's going to be replaced with this stone structure that's going to last another 100 years. This is from just after the bridge was built. You see those houses popping up behind it? Those are some of the first houses in this section of town. I mean, this bridge really paved the way to developing Eastern Heights. And that feels like a good enough place to kick things off. But before we dig in, I want to circle back to Elyria Memorial Hospital. In the early 1900s, the way to get around town was the streetcar. These are more pictures I found online. In 1907, there was a really bad trolley car accident downtown that left a number of people injured and even dead. Turns out they lacked the proper medical facilities in town, and a number of people actually died just from their injuries alone. Within a year, the town created a committee and began raising funds to build a local hospital. These are drawings of what they expected the hospital to look like. After touring several potential sites, it was decided that the new facilities would be located in the Eastern Heights area of town. This is the actual hospital they ended up erecting in 1908 with a whole 36 beds. A few years later, a man who had lost his son in that car crash, Edgar Big Daddy Allen, added on the Gates Hospital for Crippled Children, which would later launch the Ohio Society for Crippled Children, which would then eventually become Easter Seals. That started right here. Over time, the hospital would add a nursing school, a new main building, and an obstetrics wing. Now, well over 100 years later, they're part of the University Hospital's network of patient care and have been rebranded as UH Elyria Medical Center. And they're still a big part of the community right here in Eastern Heights. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves. We need to go back to the beginning. It's the late 1880s, and a couple of German immigrants navigate their way to Elyria, fall in love, and get married. Meet Charles Schultz and Louise Barbnick, the Schultzes. They have been renting in another section of town, but there are new homes being built on the other side of the river, and the prices do seem pretty reasonable. So they sign on the dotted line and build their new forever home right there on East River Street, specifically 937. Not coincidentally, her sister and her husband, Amelia Barbnick and William Fillmore, the Fillmores, built their house next door. That's going to be 941. Going back to that map, here's the block we're talking about. You can see how their properties are even the first ones to back all the way up to the river. Also about the same time, the next lot in line, 949, is purchased by Charles and Ellis Savage, notable because Ellis' parents were what were known as pioneer residents of the area. All around them, the Eastern Heights Land Company was just getting off the ground. According to the paper, they've negotiated with the city's lighting committee to get gas streetlights installed, and they've set aside a piece of land for use as a school. This would eventually become McKinley. If you went by the offices, you could even get a postcard of the new homes. These are the actual postcards they were giving away at the time. I found some examples online. I even like the slogan too, Eastern Heights, the place to live. Going back to the Schultzes. Turns out they never had any kids of their own. However, according to the 1910 census, they've taken in a 2-year-old second cousin. They'll later just call him a cousin, but I think he's actually the baby brother of the guy who married their niece. So follow this. Remember, Louise Schultz's sister lives next door. Well, this is her daughter, Olga, so Louise's niece. Right about the time of that census, she marries Fred Sass. Well, a year before then, the wife of Frank Sass, I think Fred's dad, dies, leaving a 1-year-old son. That little boy, Howard Sass, ends up being raised by the Schultzes. His story includes the time he left home to make his fortune, ended up half dead in Cincinnati with typhoid fever, and made his way back home. Later on, leaves again, this time to Boston, gets married. That doesn't work out, so he comes back home. Marries again, and then joins the service less than a month later. This is his draft card. Note the scratched out address on the top left and the title he gives Louise Schultz, foster parent. 937 East River Street was his home. Howard will go off to serve his country and make his way out west and live his life, but he is the first child to be raised in that house. Also, since they won't be widely available until sometime after World War II, I suppose we know why the Schultzes never put a swing set in that backyard either. Next time, I'm going to go back to that block on East River Street and look at the next generation of families to move in to where we all used to live.
You did what you wanted, suffice to leave. The trail of breadcrumb that I can see. Your cup is still half full. When I want to grow, when I go it alone, I can't believe